as action figure collectors, we face what we think are three fairly large problems, and today we're going to break down those three problems. Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Strong Collectors Podcast. I'm your host, Dakota, here with my co-host, Jordan, and we've got problems, as do you, probably. We're going to be talking about the three, what we think at least, are the three biggest problems that collectors face. Now, this isn't necessarily getting our lunch money stolen on our way to school. We're thinking, maybe that's still a problem for some.
Come up sometimes.
Right. So these are in no way the only problems you may be facing. These are just, I think, what we see a lot in the Facebook groups, in the comments, things like that. I'm sure, I guarantee you, Jordan, somebody's in the comments already being like, scalpers are the biggest problem.
Oh, right, yeah.
I could do a whole issue on why, or a whole episode on why I don't think that's true.
I think
but you can stay tuned for that.
There are some videos you could go back and see about that, if I recall.
True. Are we scalpers, Jordan? I don't know if we ever made that video or not, but it's been on my to-do list if I haven't.
Well, if it doesn't exist, it will, folks.
Yeah.
Scroll
Loyal
through
listeners.
our old videos to see if it's there, though.
Right.
And then tell us if we need to make it.
That's funny. All right, so it's not scalping. Hot take. That's not one of our biggest three issues.
No.
I'll hit you with what I think is, I guess biggest is subjective. What I think I see a lot, or the most of, is shelf space. And there's going to be a few things that go along with shelf space, but I'm thinking if you just you get started with collecting, it's almost like it's a problem from the very beginning, where I'm like, okay, I want to start collecting action figures. I bought 4 action figures. I put them on my shelf. My shelf is very bare. I really love my figures, but I really want to fill out this display. My problem, I got to fill out this shelf space.
Right.
I buy some more figures. I've been collecting for 5 years. My shelf is full. Very cool. But the new pre-orders just came out. I want those figures too, Jordan. My shelf is full. Where are these figures going to go?
But I like that display I have, but I got new ones.
Right. So I think, I think,
Yeah.
again, like, you're complaining because like, oh, I've got so many toys, and you're such a strong collector that you have what you want.
Right.
But, whether you're in an apartment, a house, whether that's like a studio apartment, or like you've got, maybe if you've got like a giant man cave downstairs and you're just never going to like fill that. I think that's a very few collectors in the community.
We hope to get there someday, but we're not there
Eventually. We're on our way. I've got my 4 shelves right now that I can display on this much. But again, no matter, most folks are going to run out of shelf space fairly soon in their collecting.
Yeah.
So then that comes, like, are you going to rotate your figures? Are you going to try to sell off? But, like, I think even just, like, expanding, like, we've been collecting for as long as we have. We're probably going to live for, hopefully, at least another 50 years. I mean, I'm going to live another 100 years, but
geez, dude,
within that amount of time.
Live longer than that. I got to make it to 2099 is my goal. You know that. So
Oh, true.
see if it checks out.
In the year post sometime in 2099, when we finally die, like, we're going to have kept accumulating figures
Yes.
every year, pretty much every month. At some point, we're going to run out of even storage. Like, if you're rotating, like how Jordan and I usually do it is we display our figures. You can see behind him. And then every so often we'll rotate, take those figures down, put them in storage, bring other figures out. Now we're going to do this display. Are you going to go get yourself a storage unit, and then you're paying for that storage? I think that's an issue we face, Jordan.
Well, yeah. I mean, I've got several totes, Dakota, that I have full of figures that, in a perfect world, I could see them all, have them all on display, right? That's unfortunately not the reality. This is really kind of my display. You see behind me is about what I'm working with here. So this is a small fraction of what I've got. So I do think, yeah, that is a valid concern of like, where do I store them? Even how do I store them, right? What's the best method to do that? And then setting aside space in your house to then have storage space, not even for your display, but just for where they go in general.
Yeah, because I brought this up like every time there's a new HasLab, I bring this up of like, that's cool. Like if you got the Sentinel, awesome. You got Galactus, great. You got Giant Man. How many more could you get? Like if we put out a Fin Fang Foom, if we put out a Mole Man with Giganto, a
Uncle
Fantastic
Ben, you know, HasLab. I don't know.
Right. So if you get all of those HasLabs, like that is all space taking up in your collection, and like at some point you're gonna have to say like you either have to get rid of your old HasLabs or old figures or things like that to then make room for the new stuff. So again, you guys can let us know in the comments, how do you handle this issue? Are you constantly rotating figures like to sell? Are you like, I only keep one definitive version of a character? Because I hear that a lot from people.
Right.
I can never stick to that. I have like 5, 6, however many Venoms I have, too many, but I love them all. Same with Spider-Man. Iron Man's I've got a ton of. So like that works for some characters, but for me that doesn't work for every character.
Yeah.
And then if you're collecting multiple lines, don't even get me started there. You got so many things. Anyway,
Yeah.
I think, and even when you're going through that, like if you are going to do like your version, how you do is like rotating figures, like you're probably going to keep the display up for a month to maybe 3, depending on your time that you have to rotate your displays. Then you're going to have to dust those figures, dust the shelves.
Dust
clean.
is an enemy for sure. I think that's a sub point to space is dust, because man, I do not like dust in my shelves, Dakota, especially if I got a cool setup, because then I got to rearrange it all. But
and that kind of like you said, like being as a part of like the same issue of shelf space is like, okay, if you're just, cause I think of like Dan Who kind of has more permanent setups where it's like tons of figures on like risers, and it like makes a really cool backdrop, but that's a ton of figures that like you're really not going to be taking all of those down very often. So like to dust all that is going to be like, you're going to need the day at minimum to be able to clean that space. And like there's collections bigger than that too. So anyway, I think that's enough on this shelf space issue, Jordan.
Well, and if you need help within your shelves of setting up displays, I do remember, I think there's a video you could watch with this handsome man with me here that kind of goes over some common mistakes in action figure displaying that might relieve some of the stress from this point.
Yeah. I mean, I think, you know, to piggyback on that point, Jordan, that is a beautiful video. I'm very happy about it. But if you liked that video, then we also have videos where our listeners sent in their displays, so you can check out, get some ideas from strong collector listeners on how they've displayed their figures. And then we had a live stream where we brought people on to show us, you know, live and in person what they've got working with. So fun things for you to check out. Issue number 2, Jordan, I'm going to say is budget, because with all those new figures that are going to be taking up your shelf space, you got to pay for those figures. Tell me about budget, Jordan.
Right. Well, I mean, a lot of our common approach when we first started was to be having things that we were selling and then using sales to fund our purchases. So sometimes that would be commonly going on like Facebook, different groups, buying up lots, things for cheaper, then you can sell them, and then you have a little action figure money. And the problem with that, Dakota, can be time, right? That takes some time to do that research, to look at stuff, to box them up, all that. I think within that, you've then got to figure out, how much money are you going to set aside for different figures. And I would say, I think a common thing with that can be deciding which ones you think you really need, and then which ones maybe are going to go on sale, which ones can you get later. I think kind of the FOMO, you know, I got to get this now, is a bane of collectors, right? Because if you're like, I got to buy it now, I got to get it always, I think you run the risk of then, if there's something you really do want to come along, oh shoot, I don't know if I have the budget for that right now.
Right. And I think that FOMO is a big factor in a lot of collecting, because like, I mean, we've been talking about the Maximum series for quite a bit, and like how this is the definitive Spider-Man, and like you've got to have this Spider-Man because it's going to be the best Spider-Man. And like, obviously, like, I don't blame the marketing team for doing that, because their job is to sell figures, and, you know, sparking that FOMO in a collector is part of like marketing a figure. But if you can have that like forward thinking of like, okay, do I need like this version of Spider-Man? Like, yes, it's going to be the best articulated ever been, whatever, but they don't make bodies to use them once. They're going to put it out again. So if you don't want to pay whatever the maximum price is, then you can wait for a standard it'll look different probably, but doing things like that and trying to put that FOMO to rest a little bit and think like, okay, I need a new Hulk character. This whatever 80th is going for however much, or the 20th is going for however much. It's a Green Hulk. They're going to put out a Green Hulk at some point again at retail, and you could always grab that. Any character where, like, because I know Spider-Man used to be that way when it was only, like, the retro Spider-Man was the best Spider-Man you could get, and that was going for, it was like 110, 150 maybe if it was sealed. That's insane. And since that Spider-Man, they've put out 3 new bodies. I don't know what that retro sealed Spider-Man goes for anymore, but I guarantee it's not 150 anymore. Have patience, you know. You don't have to have it all right now. You know, if you've got the money for it, do what you want with your money. I'm not going to tell you how to spend it, but don't fall into the FOMO for sure.
Yeah, and I think within sales too, you know, if there's older versions of characters, you're like, I don't know if I need this. I don't know if it really is that big of a part of my collection. I think if you need to, you know, there are lots of ways to sell figures. Those can be on Facebook, most commonly what we've done. But, you know, kind of selling those so that you can then have the money you want or need to buy the updated versions. But then being able to separate, you know, if there's those ones that you're like, this is a special figure, I don't want to sell it. Dakota and I have plenty of those. Even if they could make us money, it's like, you know, I'm never going to sell that one because I like it. And that's okay too. But I think differentiating between can I do that versus do I have to keep everything I've ever bought ever just because? And I think that's an important point to kind of work through as well. Because if you can sell that, it's like, yeah, I don't really, this one's maybe a little more obsolete in comparison to the new one.
Right. The last issue that I think collectors face is burnout. So I think, and this could be a culmination of those previous points that we mentioned, is if you find yourself just kind of like overwhelmed with the amount of collection you have, your budget is stretched thin, you're like, I'm spending way too much on figures, it's not bringing you that joy that you want, it's going to be easy to burn out and you're not going to enjoy the hobby anymore. It's going to feel like a chore and you're just going to be over it. So I think that one is probably the worst out of all of it. If we're trying to keep collectors collecting, then if they burn out, then they're done. You know, selfishly, Jordan, you and I have benefited from some folks that get out of collecting. We buy their lots and then we sell them, and then that helps us with our budget.
Yeah.
But again, I want people that want to collect to be able to continue collecting. So I guess, do you have any tips for listeners on how to prevent burnout?
Yeah, I mean, I think some of the things we've talked about before already, you know, kind of pacing yourself. I think taking the time to really think, you know, am I just buying this just because I feel like I need to, because everyone says it's the new hot, coolest thing? I think that can help you out a lot, because if you feel that internal or external pressure, like I got to buy everything, I got to get it right when it comes out, yeah, it probably is inevitable you're going to start to be like, this is more of a drain than something that I'm excited about. So I think using that point to really focus on what do you actually really want, and like, what am I actually excited about? What do I need? And is this something I could wait on? I think is probably a big piece that could help you avoid that.
And I think in addition to that, it's also good to have some sort of like community. So whether that's, you know, joining the Facebook groups, some are better than others. We like the Marvel Legends Collectors and More Facebook group, or even just like a community right here. Like, find a YouTube channel that you like. I mean, I love our community. I also am a member of Dan Who's community. So finding those people that you can, you know, like-minded collectors, I think that brings out another level of the fun, because, you know, if you're just solo doing it by yourself, that can be fun. But I think being able to like share pictures of your displays, be like, oh, I just got this new figure in. You can have the like conversation with somebody else that really likes that character. I think those kind of add to, you know, your longevity, or at least your enjoyment in what you're doing. And that's probably for anything too.
Yeah, I think definitely finding a community, and I think even just having like people that might have similar concerns or issues or input on things, I think definitely makes a big difference as well with that kind of stuff.
So those are the 3 issues that we find to be the most prevalent for action figure collectors. Let us know in the comments, were there any that we forgot? How do you deal with some of these issues? Make sure you're liking, sharing, and subscribing. And until next time, stay strong.